Well, hello out there and welcome. I'm Danny Lichtenfeld, Director of the Brattleboro Museum and Art Center. Thank you so much for tuning in for this event tonight. I hope you're all staying safe and healthy and sane. Tonight's presentation by Alison Wright was originally planned to take place at Next Stage Arts Project in Putney, Vermont on March 14th. The day Alison's exhibit here at the museum, titled Grit and Grace, Women at Work, opened. But coronavirus had other plans. We did actually open the exhibit and 7 other new exhibits that day, and then we had to close them all down the very next day. And for the following 3 months, Alison's photographs and all the work at the museum has hung in silence in the dark. However, 3 months later, I can finally say that we're open again. We reopened the museum just last Thursday. I believe we're the first museum in Vermont to reopen. And Alison's exhibit and the 7 other new exhibits that opened back in March have all been extended through October 12th. So I hope you'll get a chance to come and see Alison's work here in person, where you can really appreciate the scale and the quality of the images themselves, and also the beautiful curation done by Catherine Gastow. Hope we'll get a chance to see you in person here at the museum. Here's how this event is going to work tonight. I will be leaving the screen shortly when Alison begins her presentation. And then when she finishes, probably around 8:30, I'll come back on and we'll have a Q&A. If you're joining us via Zoom, then there are a couple ways that you can participate in the Q&A. You can type in your questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. And you can do that during the Q&A session, or if a question occurs to you during Alison's talk, you can hit the Q&A button and type it in then, and it'll stay there, and then we'll address it during the Q&A session. The other option is only available during the actual Q&A session, and that is to use the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. So when we're having a Q&A, if you use the raise hand button, we'll be notified that you want to ask a question, and we'll be able to unmute you, and you can ask your question yourself rather than typing it in. But again, only use that during the Q&A session, not during the presentation itself. You'll also see that there's a chat button down at the bottom of your screen. That is in case you need to send a message to me or to our behind the scenes events manager, Jessica Nelson, if you're having any technical issues or there's something you'd like us to try to help with. But questions should go in the Q&A box. If you're tuned in via Facebook Live and you'd like to ask a question or make a comment, just use the comment box and Jessica will be relaying those comments to me when we get to the Q&A. Before I turn things over to Alison Wright, I would just like to extend a very special thank you to Catherine Gastow, curator of Alison's exhibit here, for introducing us to Alison and for making Alison's first ever museum exhibit possible here in Brattleboro. Thank you, Catherine. And I'd also like to thank Meg Smith, Elizabeth Catlin, and everyone associated with the Vermont Women's Fund, which has generously sponsored Alison's exhibit and tonight's presentation. The Vermont Women's Fund was started by a group of women across Vermont as a way to leverage financial authority. They are a philanthropic resource funding programs for women and girls to increase their opportunities in all facets of work and leadership. Their mission is to advance gender equity in our state, and that includes closing the wage gap where women in Vermont earn 84 cents to every dollar made by a man. The Vermont Women's Fund wants to engage all Vermonters in recognizing that gender inequity, all inequity, weakens us as a community. They're committed to helping all women and girls in Vermont rise and thrive. And you can learn more about their important work at www.vermontwomensfund.org. Okay, Alison Wright has journeyed the world as a photographer for more than 2 decades, focusing her efforts on human rights issues and documenting the traditions of changing cultures around the world. Alison's photography has appeared in National Geographic, Smithsonian Magazine, American Photo, Natural History, Time Magazine, Forbes, the New York Times, and many, many other publications. She's a recipient of a Dorothea Lange Award in documentary photography for her photographs of child labor in Asia. And she's a 2-time winner of the Lowell Thomas Travel Journalism Award. Alison's writing and photographs have been published in her books, Faces of Hope, Children of a Changing World, The Dalai Lama, A Simple Monk, and The Spirit of Tibet, Portrait of a Culture in Exile. It has been an absolute joy and privilege to get to know Alison over this past year, and all of us here at the Brattleboro Museum and Art Center are so grateful that she's agreed to speak about her life and work for you tonight. So please welcome Alison Wright. You're good.
Are you seeing me?
There we are.
Oh, great. Oh my God, I'm turning into a Zoom cliche. I'm not seeing anything. So
Are you wanting to see your share screen?
well, let's see. Yeah. Okay, here we go. Perfect. Thank you. So welcome. Thank you so much. Thanks to Danny, Jessica, Aaron. Much love to Katie Gass for curating this show. It's been, we definitely had to go on pause for a while. So thank you for all of you for tuning in. I wish I could see all of you. It's been a long three and a half months here in New York City, the epicenter. So what I'd like to do is I just want to show like a little 2-minute video that my very good friends at Blue Chalk Media made about me and my work. And then I'm going to actually start with something that I had not intended 3 months ago, but I just want to show a little bit about a quick twirl through the city and what I have been seeing these last 3 months, because I've been photographing everything. So, all right, here we go. I'm diving in.
So Ali, I don't know if you think you're sharing your screen, but we're not seeing your screen right now. Oh, there we go. Okay.
There we go. Got it? Okay.
Got it.
And then here we go. Thumbs up?
Thumbs up.
All right, good.
I've had typhoid, malaria, dysentery and giardia 15 times. I had a worm in my head, which is now gone. Being run over by a horse in Mongolia, bitten by dogs. I had been attacked by a pack of wild monkeys in South Sudan twice. In the same day, I had traveled with the Dalai Lama, climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, been to Everest Base Camp twice. I've been to 150 countries. I'm very drawn to indigenous cultures and people all over the world. I've been slammed around quite a bit, but it doesn't deter me from this job. Oh, that's great. On January 2nd, year 2000, I got on a bus in Laos, and the bus got sheared in half by a logging truck. It was really bad. I was given the grim prognosis that I would most likely never walk again. It took me a couple of years of rehabilitation and surgeries, but I did it. There's something really profound about dipping your toe into the other side and feeling your own mortality. What does one do with the life that's being given back? This is such a big part of my work, to work in post-conflict and disaster areas. I feel that that's where you really connect with that crux of humanity. What kindness would you do for a stranger? My accident inspired me to start my own nonprofit. It's called Faces of Hope, to help women and children in crisis through education and healthcare. What is this thread that binds all of us? We all want the same things. We all want to love and be loved. We want safety and health for ourselves, our friends, our family, our children. We want our kids to be educated. Finding compassion in a world of chaos. That's why I do what I do. It's a blessing.
So this is where I left off 3 months ago. We'd hung this beautiful exhibit, Grit and Grace, Women at Work, at the Brattleboro Museum. And as Danny said, the day it opened was the day it closed due to the pandemic. And we just didn't know what we were getting into. We were incredibly disappointed, but understood. And so I do hope that you get to see this, because it's now being extended through October 12th. So I just want to show you a little bit about what I've been seeing these last months here, because this is just sort of, you know, what I do. This sort of apocalypse came to my city. I got off this very empty train, went to buy some food at Whole Foods, and there was nothing. It was completely empty. And, you know, I just was like, what is going on? My phone was pinging. Every assignment I had lined up just felt like a house of cards, and everything was shutting down. I was supposed to be getting on an airplane, and I decided I better not go because I saw countries were starting to close. So this was sort of New York in a nutshell at the beginning. And then they closed the city, and the day that they closed it and, you know, asked everybody to stay home, that's when I went out immediately, because I thought, well, this could be interesting. You know, let's see what that looks like in New York City. So, you know, all of this, it was like sort of being in a foreign country, and it was just so bizarre. And, you know, just to see like Grand Central completely empty, the Oculus completely empty, Times Square completely empty, Louis playing his sax to nobody. You know, of course, you know, everything was about the healthcare workers. This is Times Square. Just sort of, I walked in isolation just day after day. And then there was like these passages of time that you started feeling it, like Passover and Memorial Day and Easter. This was Easter, and I was really touched seeing this family. And so I started, there were so few people out that anybody that was out, I would ask them about their situation. I saw like few pop-up weddings. I actually was in the news because I was, you know, photographing these weddings, that it was so bizarre that people were like, quick, we have to get married, like before, like we can't do anything. And this was social distanced, and I've even gone to a Zoom wedding recently. I mean, this is how much our lives have changed. And then I started photographing people wearing the masks, because I knew that this was so bizarre and would suddenly at some point not be that interesting anymore, because it looks like this was going to become a way of life. So, and then I would get people, you know, to tell me something about themselves. And what I found so sort of curious about this, then I, you know, here, this show I had just done was looking at women at work in developing countries. And before this was a thing, I really got into photographing our essential workers, because they were the people that were out. And it really struck me that these are the people that were really keeping the city humming. They were the ones that were, you know, still out there, the essential workers, electricity that was supplying our lights and our internet and providing our pharmacy and deliveries. You know, we were getting everything delivered and trying to find food. And, you know, it was just like, I just felt like this immense gratitude to everybody that was helping us. This is a totally empty Penn Station, and this gal is on her way to go visit her family. So her mother made her dress like a human condom. I had to ask this girl, she's wearing a full hazmat suit near Central Park, and she's Chinese, and she's ironically from the epicenter in China, here studying for a year in New York, and got caught stuck here. So now she's, you know, stuck and wearing this hazmat suit. So just sort of looking at what did New York look like during this time. And I started thinking a lot about how New Yorkers kind of wear masks all the time anyway. They sort of have this, you know, I do it too. You sort of have this like, look, I have to get to where I'm going. And people were actually more responsive behind these masks. I was struck by this family. I know this doesn't look at all unusual now, but we're still very much into the masks here in New York City. I know that this talk is sort of far reaching and it's hard to understand, but you cannot go anywhere without a mask. So to see this family, this is at the very beginning, and I talked to them, and they are doctors, and they're recently married 3 months ago, but they have to live in separate states for their work. This kid couldn't wait to get to the park. You know, people were cooped up. And then it got dire. It got really, a lot of people were dying here at an alarming rate. And so photographing the bizarreness of seeing the tents in Central Park, the comfort came in, and this was a big deal. The Javits Center, or the convention center, opened up into a huge hospital. I actually photographed on this ship in Haiti. You know, there was so much military. That's all you saw were military doctors everywhere. This is a doctor. And this was just a beautiful moment because there was so much unhappiness, and just to see this healthcare worker's free smile, just sort of walking around day in the life. And it sort of broke my heart as you saw the businesses continue to stay shuttered, and especially like in my neighborhood, the places I knew. And then people were trying to stay open eventually for delivery, but, you know, just trying to get by. This is Michelle and Obama having a meal. Actually, they're just mannequins, but it's Grimaldi's way of trying to get people to come in and get delivery. Homeless, I was really focusing on the homeless because eventually all you saw were homeless. A lot of the homeless were living on the subways. So now they started shutting the subways from 1 till 5 every day to clean and disinfect them. And then this total crazy thing happened with George Floyd, and it was like the city exploded, literally exploded. And the protests started at the same time as the vandalism and the looting. And the looting was really heartbreaking because it was like all these businesses that had, all these are all burned out police vehicles, but all these businesses had worked so hard to get back, and they've lost so much in 3 months. And then, you know, here they've been robbed and looted and lost all this business, and people were just weeping. And then there was this wave of people could not board up the businesses fast enough. And so that was, you know, really the city was like tense and closing up and curfews. And, you know, this is Saks Fifth Avenue. They had a whole line of attack dogs. They had rolls of barbed wire. You know, this is my neighborhood where I shop. Everything was boarded up. This is what it looked like every day I'd go out. That's Trump Tower. But the protests were remarkable. And, you know, I marched in a lot of protests, and I really admire these kids. They have fire in their bellies, and they're really organized, and they really want to evoke change. And I think it's really time. And, you know, they're just like, all of a sudden it went from nobody in the streets to like thousands of people in the streets. And, you know, there was just a lot of action, and it continues. And every time I saw the "I can't breathe," you know, which is like George Floyd's last words, it just wasn't lost on me that that was what this COVID thing was about. I can't breathe. It was affecting the lungs. And so it's just, I don't know, there's a very interesting correlation for me with this. A lot of anxiety, a lot of vocalism. So anyway, just a quick twirl through some of the things I've been seeing. And they were great. They're watching out for each other. Everybody's wearing masks. They're handing out water, sunscreen, this is, and it was organized, but they want change against the police, a lot of that. So anyway, I just wanted to share a few of those images with you because this is like sort of what I do. And then, it was coming to my city and my travel wings had been clipped. So I realized I'm a photographer that, just has to be out no matter what. So it's not just about the travel. So where did I get this? My mom was a flight attendant for Pan Am back in the days when it was a very glamorous profession. And I really admire her free spirit. She's British. She met my dad from Belgium on a flight. And they eventually immigrated to the States. So my brother and I could sort of have a more opportune life, which I'm very grateful for. And this is how she saw the world. And I think a little bit to her dismay, this is pretty much how I see it. She sees it in stilettos and I'm sort of in hiking boots all the time. But that last photo is me covering the revolution in Nepal. I've just been tear gassed. And so I really had this dream of, I studied photojournalism at school and I really had this dream that I, really wanted to get to India. And so I saved my money all through college. And when the time came, my father said, it's so far, so dangerous. Why don't you go backpacking in Europe instead? And so I did that to sort of appease him. I got over to Spain. And I mailed a postcard from Spain saying how much I love the beaches of Spain. But what I really did is I took a boat over to North Africa. And it was my first real glimpses of poverty and children in need. And it was a defining trip for me because I knew that then I wanted to do something to help with my camera. That's always been an incredibly important aspect of my photography. And then I went over to Greece and had someone mail postcards from Greece telling my family how much I love the beaches of Greece. And then what I really did is I hopped the boat over to the Middle East and I hitchhiked all over the Middle East on my own, stopping to work in kibbutzes, living with Bedouins in the Sinai, going to Egypt, hitchhiking to Beirut when they bombed the embassy there. And so I was pretty fearless. I went on to kind of live out my cowgirl dreams for a couple of years in the outback of Australia. And by the time I got back to California, where I'm from, I went to this newspaper in San Diego and asked the editor, do you think, I have any chance of making a living at doing this? And to my surprise, she hired me on the spot. And so it was really great because here I was working on all these border stories and living in a place that had basically a third world country right in my backyard. So I started photographing a lot of the kids and orphanages. And I remember flipping through this magazine on the newspaper and looking at these beautiful doe-eyed children. And I thought, oh, I'm so old, I'm 24, I'm never gonna get to India. And I called the photographer to tell him how much I loved his work of these children from India. And he said, I'm a UNICEF photographer. If you're ever in New York, come by and show me your portfolio. So I bought a plane ticket. I came out to New York, showed him my work, and he offered me an assignment in Nepal. And I was so excited. He asked me, I want to do this? And I sort of paused 5 seconds for dignity and said, yes. And so anyway, that's how I ended up in Nepal. And this was a very defining period of my life because I had sort of only photographed in black and white until then. And I had hundreds of rolls of color film waiting for me when I got there. So I'm like, oh, I guess I better learn how to shoot color. But more importantly, they really liked my work. And so they offered me a position to stay. And so I went for this 3-week assignment and I didn't leave for more than 4 years. So here we are in Nepal, and this job with the UN was so amazing because it was really like every morning before I'd open my eyes, I think this is exactly where I want to be, exactly what I want to be doing. And it was really looking at all aspects of children, the right to religion, the right to water, child labor, which is what I got this Dorothea Lange Award in. So while I was there, I got very interested in this Tibetan culture in exile. And that became, I'm a huge proponent of, you know, your own projects. And this was a very personal project. And I was really sort of amazed at how this culture was holding together without a country. And so this is Tibetan New Year. This is in Nepal. A lama's died. This is in Kathmandu. And then I started really going into Tibet and looking at, you know, this country had been taken over by China in 1959. And so this culture was still so tight. And I went to basically all the 57 Tibetan refugee settlements throughout India and Nepal, really documenting this culture and what, you know, this 6,500 monasteries were destroyed. And so, you know, how was Buddhism holding them together and this rebuilding of the monasteries in exile? This is in Tibet, prayer flags. And so I was going further and further afield. I was going really out to work with nomads. And I was, you know, so I was really focusing sort of on the demise of the nomads. And I felt a little like Edward Curtis to go out there. You know, he documented the last of the American Indians. And that's what it felt like to me as I went around photographing these incredibly beautiful people that I would just find. And they didn't really understand like what I found so interesting about them. But, you know, they barely exist any longer. So, you know, I really was dedicated to this work, and I ended up like getting like every kind of disease by living there: malaria, typhoid, dysentery, hepatitis. I had dengue fever. I was a case study for some weird disease, and I spent a few months in the Tropical Disease Hospital in London. And so the bottom line was I could go back to Asia for at least a year. So I didn't want to waste a year. So, and I also didn't want to come back to the States without health insurance. So I applied to grad school. And so I did my master's degree in visual anthropology at UC Berkeley, studying culture through photography and film. This program I made up. But I used this work and I brought this work together, and that's the basis of my work, which then became my, my first book, The Spirit of Tibet. And this picture, I remember seeing this little girl. She was walking back from a horse festival and it was pouring rain and I didn't want to get out of the car. And then I remembered why I was there. So I got out and I took some terrible pictures of her. And then I thought, you know, I need to work harder. So I brought her into this little school, and she's so small. I had to like get her up on a desk, and I just really wanted to capture her. This is all natural light. But I didn't even see the picture until 3 months after I had photographed her, because it was on film. And I just felt like I had captured something. And then especially when I saw the picture, I felt like, to me, I felt like this really captured in this little girl who's no more than 5 years old, the resiliency, the tenacity, and a little bit of the sadness of this culture that I felt like I've been documenting for so long. So I was doing this piece for National Geographic on the nomads. And my editor sent me the pictures and she didn't choose this. And I asked why, and she said it was the colors, it didn't really fit. And I said, oh, could you put her on the wall anyway? The wall is like the final selection that the main editor walks by and chooses. And anyway, he stopped and said that one. So it was a great call because this little girl has become my most iconic image. She's was in the magazine, she was on the cover, she was on the cover of one of my books I did, and then National Geographic chose her to be on the cover. They chose it out of every photo ever taken at National Geographic to be on the cover of this, celebrating 125 years of National Geographic. So I've been photographing this culture for so long, I'm seeing a new generation, and I was very interested in like, these kids haven't even seen Tibet, so how do they feel so Tibetan? And the Dalai Lama heard that I was covering so much of his culture and people, and he requested to meet me, which I thought, oh, great, I'll go and, get a blessing. Well, we ended up developing this incredible friendship, and he is just one of the most remarkable people I've ever met. And, the first time I met him, he gave me a Tibetan name, and just, we ended up just, that I got to photograph him. And this is like before he won the Nobel Peace Prize. It was like 87, 88 when I first met him. In fact, I sent a picture back to my parents. I was really proud. Here's me with the Dalai Lama. And all they knew is I'd gone to Nepal for 3 weeks. I didn't come back for like over 4 years. And they see me with this guy with shaved head, mala beads, and monk's robes. And my mom said to my father, oh my God, she's joined a cult, go over there and get her. And anyway, my dad came with my brother, and I brought them to Tibet to show them it's the culture, not a cult. And my dad became a huge advocate for Tibet. So I've done a number of book covers, and in fact, I did a book on the Dalai Lama called A Simple Monk. This was the cover, and just had an incredible opportunity to photograph him many times over the years. And so his birthday is July 5th coming up. He'll be 85 years old. And I had the honor, I was requested by his secretary to videotape a birthday message for him. One of my greatest memories of him, which I'll share with you, but I was walking from his home to his office, and he stopped to feed his pet parakeets. And this is one of our more recent visits. This was like many, many years later. He's now famous, ubiquitous, rock star celebrity status. And I turned to him and I just said, thank you so much for meeting me. I just want you to know that I really have the best of intentions. And he looked at me with that laser sharp focus that he has. And he said, yes, I know. And good intent, most important in all that you do, always remember. And those words really had an impact on me, because just as a simple human being, I don't always say and do the right thing, but what is my intent? What is my intention? I think about that all the time. And I think about it when I'm making a photo. What is my intention here? So this is him leaving, blessing a guard, holding a gun. So my life was really where I wanted it to be. I was back living in Asia. I was working all over the world. And that's when it throws you a curveball. And, I was on this assignment. I was in Laos working on another project, and I got on a bus, very much like these buses are, with wooden seats. And I was going from the north to the south, and the bus got hit by a logging truck, and it sheared in half. And I was right at the point of impact. I was in the front, like 3 or 4 rows back. And everybody got off the bus, but I was knocked unconscious and pinned with the logging truck, and the bus caught fire. And 2 men braved their lives to come back on this bus and drag me off. I nearly lost my arm because they had to pull so hard. And when I came to, I knew I was in really bad shape because I couldn't move at all. And there was guerrilla fighting. People were shooting, so people didn't want to stop and help. And I was losing a lot of blood. And most alarming is I had collapsed lungs. I couldn't breathe. So I relate to all this I can't breathe situation, because I know what that's like. And these villagers, stepped in, they saved my life. They brought me to a cow shed, and this young man sewed my arm back up with an upholstery needle and thread, no painkillers, nothing. And I was laying there for over 10 hours, and there was just a point where I just knew I wasn't going to make it. I couldn't make it through the night. And I even wrote a note to my family telling them how I died and where I died. And that was a really profound experience for me, to just really be at that point of letting go and feeling no fear at all. I was just ready. And it's just interesting because it wasn't my time. This British aid worker just happened to be driving by. And again, this intervention of somebody that step beyond, came and saved my life and drove me all the way to Thailand. And this is like 5 minutes before I flatlined. And like within an hour of getting there, I would have died. And anyway, I was 3 weeks in intensive care. Friends, my family was notified. It still didn't look good for me, but it was really crazy because when I got back to the States, I was medevac back to the States and told that I'd probably never walk again. And after more than 30 surgeries, it was really hard because, you know, here I was this avid kayaker, scuba diver, yoga, photojournalist, very active, and I was completely bedridden, couldn't walk. And after about 30 surgeries, this doctor came in and said, you better think about what you want to do with your life now. You're never, you know, going to work as a photographer again or, you know, walk. And I was like, really? Because I plan on climbing Mount Kilimanjaro for my birthday next year. And I just sort of like, that just came out. And so it took about 1.5 years. I changed all my doctors and rehab. And it's a very, you know, long story, but about 1.5 years later, I finally got to kayak again, which was huge for me to be in the outdoors. And this is at Glacier Bay in Alaska. And then 2 years after the accident, I did it. I made it to the top of Kilimanjaro. So that was really profound for me. It was a lot of work. I felt like, you know, I felt like I got my physical strength back, but I needed, and I found a physical and spiritual strength within me that I didn't even know I had, but I needed to like get my emotional strength back. And so I needed to get back on the bus, so to speak, but actually literally. So I went back to Laos, and this is 3 years after I got back on the bus, same bus, but I went back to that little village, and I found the people that had saved my life. I found the young man that had sewed my arm back up. That was amazing. And this is Dr. Bunsam. This man, I love him. This is the doctor in Thailand. There was one doctor in this whole hospital, this border hospital in Thailand. I couldn't even get to Bangkok. And this man has literally held my heart in his hands. I had a herniated heart. My heart had been torn out. My lungs were collapsed. I had a ruptured spleen. I don't even know what a spleen does. I just said, leave it in. But he saved my life. So this was a real turning point for me to get back. And so anyway, I wrote this book called Learning to Breathe. And that is the story of my survival, which then inspired me to start this fund, Faces of Hope, which helps women and children through crisis, through education and healthcare. And so I did a lot of work with the Travel Channel and Discovery, which gave me this great outlet to photograph the most beautiful places in the world, but then also the social conscious issues that I really care about, like kids that are being affected by landmines, the beauty of Burma. And then I got into photograph Aung San Suu Kyi while she was under house arrest. And then this book, Human Tribe. So I published 10 books. This is my latest book, Human Tribe. And what I love about this book, it's like, it's just sort of celebrating our visual human tapestry, because it's just, you know, I'm just want to do a quick like run through. I curated this in a very triangular viewpoint. These are just portraits of people. I've been to 160 countries. Looking at the beauty of our culture and our humanity in like Ethiopia, India, because, you know, everywhere that I've gone, it's the same the world over. We all want to love and be loved. We all want a little money, enough to get by. We want safety and health for ourselves, our friends, our family, education for our children. It's really the same everywhere. And so all of my work that I do, that is, you know, my books or whatever, I feel like I'm really trying to look at like how are we universally connected, and just looking at like here, Liberia, Ethiopia, Sierra Leone, South Sudan, Pakistan. This little girl handing a flower in Kashmir. So I have this bigger book, Face to Face, Portraits of the Human Spirit, and then this little book, Human Tribe. It's a smaller, more New York, apartment friendly. And this is, you know, in Mexico. And designing it, it was like a dinner party to see who could sit next to who, you know, and this guy from China with this guy from Rwanda. I just love photographing people. And so, you know, this is a very precious book to me. These are the twins in San Francisco. Because when you go and you meet somebody, you know, of course, when I'm on assignment, I have a fixer and someone that's helping me with everything. But when you go to, you know, I'm often on my own, and people are like, oh, how do you approach people? I don't speak their language, but that's what I really love. It's like, it's like you're speaking from the heart. And it's this big dance of vulnerability because you're letting your guard down saying, hey, you know, I'm going to be open to you if you'll be open to me. This is Jean. She's 85. She runs around on her Ski-Doo delivering mail in Bettles, Alaska. This is my room in the Seychelles. I'm sorry, in St. Lucia. There's no walls. It's really spectacular. So you can see the Grand Tetons, and then asking a guy to take his shirt off is just a perk of the job. I did 3 books for National Geographic that are on London, Great Britain, and China. So I really had to cover that swath of territories. This was in the London book. It was a wedding that I crashed. China, more from the China. This is Papua New Guinea. I love the idea of ancestry. Yeah, I guess the way I'm going to photograph is a lot different now because I have to socially distance, but I really love this getting close. This is in Bangladesh, Afghanistan, Juan Bastida on his 83rd birthday, Thich Nhat Hanh. And, you know, looking at religions around the world, the Sikhs, Israel, Christians, the Rohingya, the Muslims. So just to show you a little of the dichotomy of my life. So I'm in this beautiful $10,000 night resort. I did a lot of like work for Islands and big glossy magazines. So I've really been to some beautiful places, but I do a lot of hard photojournalism as well. And so I did this beautiful $10,000 night resort in Turks and Caicos, and I get this call, there's just been an earthquake in Haiti. How soon could you get there? So I jumped on a plane. They charter a plane, I get to Haiti. So I go from this to this literally overnight. And this amazing family took me in and said, you know, you can't, no one was sleeping indoors. So I just had to sleep. I slept in these people's yard for 3 weeks and they were just remarkable. But when you hear that 300,000 people have been killed, how do you show that? You know, so it was looking at just individual people and really getting their stories. I know that a lot of people, there's different people watching this, so I really didn't put a lot of the gory images in, but, you know, looking at the mass graves, and when those pictures got out, I was so touched to see these priests that come in and were blessing the bodies, but they come with bulldozers and they buried them all, gave them proper burials. This is little Collins. He's an orphan. He lost a leg. He's blind in one eye. And every time I went in, he's like, I want your shirt. I want your shirt. I'm like, no, you can't have the shirt. Because I only had one shirt. But then the last day I gave him the shirt. And then it was great because I got sent back and I got to bring him clothes. This girl went spontaneously blind simply from the sheer trauma of what she'd seen. I'd never seen that before, but I saw a number of these children that had been affected like that. She lost her eyesight and some kids went deaf from the trauma. So the tsunami, this woman was devastated. This town alone, excuse me, lost 6,000 people. She was holding her 2 children in her arms and they got swept out to sea. And so she started to throw herself in the ocean after I made this photo, and I had to put my cameras down and like hold her down until she could get help. But, you know, sheer devastation that happened there. She lost her parents. And so these are sort of like, this is a year I covered poverty. I did a book called Faces of Hope on children around the world. And like, this is Marian Wright Edelman then hired me to go photograph poverty in America, which is, I think, really rising to the surface right now. We're really seeing it. This is Navajo reservation, but seeing how many people are so close, like one paycheck away from, you know, just speaking to New York alone, it's like unbelievable how many food banks are, you know, really in need right now. So, you know, I'm really going to encourage everybody, like, really support your local food banks. Even at this time, like, were 700 to 800 cars a day going through these food banks. Like, these people would not eat. I mean, now with this, you know, crisis, it's really, really huge. I mean, people that never thought that they would, you know, ever need it. Migrant workers in Texas. this woman had slit her wrist because she can't buy food and shoes for her kids, which is, you know, unbelievable in America. Mississippi, around the Mississippi Delta, covering Katrina, which was really mishandled. And then I was like photographing these beautiful places for Nat Geo when someone told me about these Burmese migrant workers. And so I went, you know, and the car came to pick me up and I was about to leave. And then I just felt like, you know, I want to stay. I want to see what this is about. And then I ended up photographing, like I really found this amazing story of these migrant workers that their passports were taken, all their money. She will never be able to get out of this situation. And they live in just utter squalor. And the men are sent out. This is in Phuket, Thailand. And the men are sent out on rickety old fishing boats while the women stay back and they behead these little fish for $2 a bag. This is like how they live. And they live like in the sewage. And then with my fund, we were able to help support a little school and a mobile medical unit. You know, the women, and like this is after the earthquake in Nepal, place near and dear to my heart, like really covering a lot of this, a lot of the women picking up. And then also, again, being able to raise money to help to bring tents for the amazing Nepal Youth Foundation. So those were a few building blocks that were leading towards this, because I had been doing this work, and the National Geographic named me a Traveler of the Year, someone who travels with passion and purpose. Because when I started my fund, the Faces of Hope Fund, the idea is to give back to the communities that I photograph in, because I just felt like after my accident, it just brought a whole new empathy to my work. Like I really wanted to, you know, you always hope that making a photo will help make a difference. I thought, why not me? And so, you know, that's what I'm able to do, is to partner with nonprofits and to draw attention to what people are doing, sort of solutions journalism, you know, to show things that are working, to show hope, instead of just like, oh, wow, you know, these poor people. That has been something that has been really important to me, like to walk my talk and to give back to the communities. So this was really moving for me. I was like on this assignment in Nicaragua, and then I found these women that would go to this large garbage dump every day, and they were collecting recycling, and then they would, you know, make about $1 a day. And I thought, you know, women work so hard in these countries, they will do anything for their families. And the men, hate to say it, often take the money, smoke, drink, gamble. And these women were all like deserted by their husbands or widowed. This gal's actually only 15. Oh my gosh, I went through like hoops to try to get her to go to school and set it up. And then it was all set to go and she disappeared. So that was a bit disappointing, but so yeah, here, this is in Myanmar, and she has, you know, she works laundry, and her husband likes that she's working, but she really wants to save her money, and she wants to buy a washing machine because she doesn't want to have to keep like coming home and then doing laundry. So this is in Sierra Leone. So this woman sells mangoes. She's a fruit seller, and she'll make like maybe $30 a month, and it's seasonal, dependent on the fruit. But in Liberia, this woman got a microloan, and she was able to start this dry goods store, and she, you know, sells these things. She makes about $100 a month in Liberia. And now this is in another part of Liberia. This woman got a bigger loan, and she was able to procure these, you know, plastic things, and she makes about $300 a month. In Liberia, it's very hard for women to get loans because they have no collateral and they have no way to get them. And so they can never rise. They can only do small businesses. This woman got her husband to sign on for a loan. And then she, you know, was able to get a bigger loan. And she makes nearly $4,000 a month, which might be my retirement plan, selling buckets in Liberia. Agriculture, huge. So on average, women make just over 40% of the global agricultural labor force, but they only own, like, these women only own 20% of the land. So these women have really gone beyond kitchen gardens. These women are actually out there to sell, and they've really learned the power of working together. So like, this is like swampland in Liberia. These women have like created this co-op where, you know, they're growing chilies. So they work together, sell together. Same in Rwanda. They're really looking at the power of that. Women often don't get good seeds. You know, they really get the short end of the stick. Here in Zambia, this Good Agro place is helping them to get really good seeds. These women are working in soybean fields. And here these women are earning $3 a day. They're sorting through peanuts and nuts. I love these two women. So they're out here working. This is Lexine and Victoria. And Lexine is like, she was, you know, has some kids with this guy from Malawi. This is in Zambia. And she's like, oh, I didn't want to marry him because he's so lazy. I'm a farmer. I want to work. And then Victoria's telling me how she, you know, she's trying to save her money, but her husband keeps taking it. So she's hiding the money. She really wants to buy an ox cart, and she really wants to get a savings account. So these women have this concept of wanting to save. And she hides the money in this purse, like somewhere hidden in the bedroom. So I hope he's not watching this slideshow, but you know, women working in Nepal. Here, this woman, she's helping her husband with the woodworking business, and she managed to procure a small loan. Meanwhile, he's off playing cards. The women are often having to do all the housework on top of like whatever other work. This is Guadalupe. She's a coffee farmer in Nicaragua. And coffee is one of the most highly traded commodities here. Came in the 1800s. And has played a significant role, but many of these women come from the rural areas to work on the 40,000 coffee plantations. Nicaragua, women undertake 70% of the work in the industry, but own just 23% of the land. This is Beatrice in Mexico. She runs this agave farm where it takes 10 years to grow these plants, and then she milks them for their honey meal. They only give this juice for 3 months. She ferments it, and then it makes this alcoholic beverage, the beverage of the gods. Women that are working in agriculture, Thailand, it's all over the world. So the microfinance, when the women get a little bit of money, this really can elevate them. It's what Melinda Gates calls the moment of lift. And it's really amazing to see like what these women can do with a little money. This is in Burma, Myanmar. This woman's opened a guitar factory. This woman's opened her own bakery. You can really see it's like how hunched over she is, literally backbreaking work. This woman, she's widowed. She got a little bit of a loan, and she's running an incense factory out of her home. This woman's making these core straw mats. This woman in Burma, she's making these little bamboo baskets, and then home-based income generating projects like this. And we all care about our hair, you know, in Africa, they really care about it, but you know, she's opened this hair salon, and I really admire this woman. This is in Burma. She used to make this string. She saw a need for the rope. She helped with her husband to help design this machine that makes rope. And so there's great organizations like BRAC. BRAC has been this organization that's helped some of the women procure those loans. And this is like a chicken project that they started. And they have given these women chickens, taught them how to care for them. And they have to make their own chicken coop. And then they sell the eggs, and that's how they can send their kids to school. They sell the chicken and the eggs. This woman has, she's getting a loan because she has a foot pedal sewing machine, and she wants to grow her business, get electric machines, and then she's teaching her children. She wants them to have better jobs, but she's also teaching them sewing as a backup plan. And here she's meeting to pay back her loan. And what I so admired about these women is that when they meet to pay back the loan, they meet once a week, often in these situations that if a woman can't pay back the loan, then they will, you know, the other women will chip in and help her. Mobile money for women that are too busy to actually come and meet because their business is growing, they can just pay over the phone. South Sudan, the newest country in the world. So they have this, they're sewing home-based income generating project versus like Bangladesh, where they are making all our cheap clothing, H&M, Zara, Marks and Spencer's. There's over 5,000 garment factories in Dhaka alone. And we all heard about the collapse of the Rana Palace and how some of them are not so great. Sujo makes about $100 a month working. You can really see she's got, a big task behind her. So this is Tunisia, and Tunisia is actually the largest gateway for ISIS recruitment. These women have really suffered greatly, the whole country, in fact, because it is really suffered because they rely on tourism so much. It's a huge market, especially for Europe, and people have really cut back. So in these very poor areas like Gaza, they're really struggling to make a living. And so factories like Benetton, this is a Benetton factory, came in and started good factories and really got them working under other women that really care about them. And it was funny, when I left this, a day of photographing here, the woman that owns this factory stopped and was like, there's a few men there. And she was kind of chatting, signaling to him. And I said, are you signing? And she said, yeah, he's deaf. And I'm like, wow, how do you know how to sign? She said, well, I have 14 people here that work here with disabilities. She said, I went to France for a year to learn how to sign, which I thought, wow, that's really a sign of caring deeply for your, employees. Another thing they were doing there in Tunisia, they have a huge industry with olive oil. So I was at a lot of the olive farms. These women are picking olives, and some of the women own the factories. They're pressing the olives here. Working in weaving carpets, auto factory. There's over 5,000 women working, in the 80% of the employees here are women, because the management says that women are more focused and they don't take as much cigarette and coffee breaks. This is Kerkena Island. It's all fisher women. This is in Tunisia still. And they own the land under the water, which is really interesting because they have whatever swims through their nets, they get to keep it. So it was really, really amazing going out with these remarkable women. This woman thinks she's got the best job in the world. This woman's still weaving nets at 70 years old, making date, coffee, just things to get by. So healthcare, big issue. So this is in Liberia, and this is Doris. She's got a number of children. But these healthcare workers actually walk home to home to make sure that these women are getting prenatal care, delivering babies they otherwise wouldn't have it. And I was there right on the cusp of the Ebola pandemic. And so that was happening. And so you can imagine how much they need that. And now with this pandemic, it's just, that's how they get healthcare. This is Mary. She walks house to house. She delivered her own baby, which I think is pretty intense. Teresa is remarkable. She started up this little place right in the middle of the market because she knew that's where women would come and where it would be the most busiest. So this woman, Patience, is getting her 3-month birth control shot. And this is really an amazing thing for women to have this, because it's the largest. Contraceptives are the greatest life-saving, poverty-ending, women-empowering innovation ever created, because women can then decide when to have their kids, how to have their kids, who to have their kids with. Makes a huge difference in the workforce for women. This is an amazing project that I've been photographing for a number of years, the Nepal Youth Foundation. This is the Kamlari, and these are young girls in Western Nepal many years ago were being sold into bonded labor. And my friend Olga Murray, who's the most remarkable woman on the planet, this organization has almost single-handedly stamped this out. And these girls are no longer being sold. And, she gave piglets to the families so that the families would sell the piglet at the end of the year instead of the girl child, which is a really sad statement what a girl is worth in Nepal. So I've been going back over many, many years, nearly, 25 years, more than 25 years, and really looking at where these girls are at. So this is, now they're free, but she owns a pig farm and they have goats, and this is Kamala. She got a small loan and she's running her own motorcycle maintenance business. These are the Dalit women. These are the lowest of the low. There's 5.5 million of them in Bangladesh alone. And they're the untouchable caste. So they're the lowest. They're all street sweepers and toilet cleaners. This woman, if you can imagine, she cleans toilets, and if someone urinates, she gets 5 taka. So they defecate, she gets 10. So just imagine that she's like hanging out, waiting to see what's going on, and then hoping that maybe she'll make a little more money. Afghanistan, this is very unusual to see this contingency of a woman police force, because usually they're completely burqa'd, but I thought these women were so remarkable, so strong. And they, by having women on the force, are really helping other women. They're very marginalized. I was there really looking at, these girls that were like returning to school, and what's happening with the women there. So women that are affected by war. Here in Rwanda, these women are coming back from the genocide. They're making like a penny a brick. In the Congo, like literally every woman has been raped in the Congo. It's a huge tool of war. And it was it was incredible to me that these women could effuse such joy. Like this was a Women for Women project. And these women were saying the work is a sense of purpose, a sense of community. Here they're learning how to make Belgian waffles in the Congo, but numeracy, literacy. So this teacher she's working over, of the 867 million illiterate adults in the world, 2/3 are women. So they're getting this numeracy, literacy training. This is a merry-go-round project where the women get a bunch of money, and then what they can do with it, what they want. And this woman, this is very unusual. She's in the Congo. She bought fishing nets. It's unusual for women to fish, but she thought it's something she could teach her children on Lake Tanganyika. This is refugees in Uganda. And so looking at what they're doing, these women, like they came from South Sudan. She's lost her husband. So many of them have lost their husbands. And in this area, it's also very unusual for them to take like 2 wives. So they sell cheap clothing. This is a project where they're making soap. She's hoping for a bit of a loan. She lost her leg. She lost her husband. She lost her children. She lost her leg. So she's hoping to get a loan. This is a BRAC project in South Sudan where they're given goats to raise in these refugee camps. And again, in the these people have been refugees for 25 years, and they're only just coming back to Uganda. And they have so much trauma from war. Like this man is he's drunk, and they all have 2 wives. So he comes and he beats these women, and they banded together, they hide his machete in different parts of the thatched roof. This woman was so intent on her husband not having the kids that she tried to commit suicide. She ate chloroquine. Unfortunately, she was pregnant, lost the child, and now she's being tried for murder. So she's being held alone and in isolation in this home. Rohingya refugees. This is a huge 1 to 4 hours a day. Women collect water and wood. And that's where they're most vulnerable. They go into the forests, and that's where they get raped. So it's really great that these like different projects that are helping to, so many houses are burned down from these little fires. That's their whole source of lighting. So it's great when you see things like BioLight. This was a Finca-based project, but they brought these lights to help. Like it's life-changing, like imagine it's pitch black and she can't like bathe her child. It creates a whole new like workforce. They can work in the evening or in dark places. This is a great little stove where if you can see it, they have the fuel, but the light is charged. And the phones and the lights can charge. This is life-changing to be able to charge your mobile phone and have a lifeline. This is an amazing project, Sambita. This is started by a couple kids from Georgia Tech, where they actually collect fecal waste, dry it, decontaminate it, turn it into charcoal briquettes, and then sell it in the market for fuel. Almond divers, this is traditional work. I'm sorry, it looks like I'm going a little over time here, but the women that are pearl divers. So they were really amazed when I showed up to go diving with them. But this is a 2,000-year-old tradition in Japan. And all these women in their 70s, I don't think it'll last another generation because none of the young women want to do this. But these women were amazing. They're free divers, and I could barely keep up with them. She's taken over this pottery business from her father. A lot of these women are moving in and taking these very male-based jobs. Like this is a very old confectionery shop in Japan, and this is passed down father to son for 5 generations. The daughter's the first one to take it over. She's the first woman to actually do this weaving. This is a man's job. This is really beautiful. This is a woman in Japan that they started in a studio in the 1950s. So women had work in Okinawa, and I know I'm going to pronounce it wrong, but it's Minge, where these women it's now a project that 9 women can come in every year to the studio. And it's just the beauty of creating something that we use every day. And this woman, she's 67, she's taking time off to learn how to make a kimono from scratch. And, you know, just the beauty of the process of this work. Swaziland, this is really amazing. These projects like Nest is partnering with these women that are creating these artisan projects. And they sent me there to teach these women how to use point and shoot cameras so they could sell their things on the internet, which actually worked out really well. This woman, Emma's remarkable. She asked why I kept pointing this flashlight at her. She had no idea it was a camera. And then I taught her how to use a camera. And she was so good. She looked at the back and she got it. And she said, oh, you come with me to my home. So I traveled in a truck with her for an hour. We got to her home and she was so proud. She makes beautiful, like, this is how Emma works on this beautiful loom. But she wanted to introduce me to her mother. And first of all, she was very proud of this house, which she said had no corners, which is true. But she had, here's her mother that is weaving with palm fronds. And this is where she initially learned how to weave. And you can see that she's used these old batteries, rusted batteries, like it's very innovative. But her mother says, you know, well, she'll always be able to sell straw mats because she said we eat on them, we sleep on them, and when we die, they roll us in them. So there's always a market for straw mats. Crispina, she makes black pottery. In Haiti, women are really struggling to come back since the earthquake. This is Papillon Enterprises, gives these women jobs. Mexico, where they're dipping candles. This is like an artisan project in Madagascar, where these women, back in the 16th century, they thought that these people were sorcerers because they were writing on, the Muslims were writing on paper, and now they've turned it into this craft that these women can sell. This is Pababin. This is in Gujarat, in the middle of nowhere in India. And what's amazing about her is like, she learned how to do this craft, sewing, and by 5G internet, I don't know why India has 5G internet before us, but this internet has been able to completely sell her business. And so through that marketing tool, she now employs every woman in the community to work for her by selling these bags. And it's completely changing the community. Haiti, she's making $5 by selling charcoal. These are my gals, Chobi's Angels. This is all women guides in Botswana, women gauchos. This is a woman, my favorite noodle shop in Thailand, that she became so popular. She just got a Michelin star, which I'm so happy for her, but it's a bummer because you can't get near the place now. You know, looking at rural women that work so hard, like nomads, you know, milking yak, they're in real survival mode. Here, these women have actually sheared sheep, made the felt. Here they've made the felt. Now they have to travel. They have to keep moving and to make their yurt. That's just like for living, you know. I mean, it's just remarkable to see how they survive. She's like the top woman archer in Mongolia. Met her. I love this woman. So she's selling in the market in the heat. She's 76 years old. She's selling in this market in Nicaragua. And, you know, I was asking her, what is she selling? She had this big, heavy tub of calabash and cocoa. And I said, oh my God, I can't believe you carry this all day. She's 76. And she said, I can't believe you carry so much equipment. I had all these cameras with me. And so this is the picture that she's wearing my belt, like when I have all my lenses, and this tub was so heavy and I have it on my head, and this is like at the end of the day. But what's so funny is that she's such a little wisp of a woman. I'm only 5'2", so you can imagine she's such a teeny little thing. This woman makes masks. This is like remarkable women in the brothels in India that have often been sold by their own husbands or tricked. You can see this woman living under the bed there. That's her home with that little thank you bag there. So, you know, a lot of them have been like sold or, you know, brought over from other countries. And so there's this great project, Aruna, that they're teaching, you know, trying to get these women out and teaching them to sew, and they're making these bags that can be sold here, yoga bags. And so these are women that are brought out from this and elevated, you know, and given this opportunity to have another life. And so you ask any of these women why they're doing this, they will all say it's for the betterment of their children. And, you know, this is what's really gonna elevate, you know, many of these kids are not gonna be working in farms and such. 130 million girls between the age of 6 and 17 are out of school, and 50 million girls are primary school age. Half of them are in sub-Saharan Africa, will never even enter a classroom. So this is something that I feel like the greatest strength that we can find within ourselves is to help other people. And that is something that is my call to action, is to help support these organizations that are help giving women jobs, because this is what is going to be life-changing for them. This is South Sudan, sending girls to school in Tanzania. Those are like BRAC projects here. And then here in Kenya, Uganda, and this little Grace here in Tanzania is attending a girls club for, you know, that was set up for kids that don't make it to school. So I just want to end on this one. I'm circling back to the tsunami in Sri Lanka, and I'm making this photo of a man who's just buried 5 of his family members. It's heartbreaking. He's reading the Quran. It's dusk. I made some photos of him, and then I walked up to him to just hold his hand and tell him how sorry I am. And he just looked at me and said, "Please don't forget about us." And that always stayed with me, because I feel like that's why I do what I do, is to really draw attention to these people that are in need. And so thank you very much for listening. And that's it. I'm ready to take some questions.
Allie, can you see me?
Yes. Oh my gosh, I can see both of us. Okay.
So that was like your 100th Zoom presentation that you've ever given, right?
That was my very first Zoom presentation. Oh my gosh, I hope it went okay.
It was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was terrific, and just seeing all your photographs, unbelievable.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah,
thank
but
you for this
wow.
opportunity.
Oh my God, of course. It's our honor. I don't know if Katie Gasto is still watching. If you are, Katie, we can't thank you enough for connecting our museum to this incredible person and her amazing work. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Dion Searcy, for tuning in tonight and for your work. And thank you to the Vermont Women's Fund for the indispensable work that you're doing in our state, making a huge difference, and we're so grateful for that. So thank you, Meg, Elizabeth, everyone else associated with the Vermont Women's Fund. Thank you, Jessica Nelson, our events manager, who's behind the scenes making the Zoom magic happen. Really appreciate all that you do, Jessica. And of course, finally, Alison, this is amazing. It's an honor for us to have your photographs up at the museum. I hope you'll come up and see them again before October 12th.
Absolutely.
And I hope many people will come. It's a nice place to socially distance yourself here at the museum. It's not hard, and you're never allowed to touch anything anyway. So you don't have to worry about that. So please do come visit. And Ali, for tonight, your amazing presentation and your patience and thoughtfulness with these great, great questions that people asked. Can't thank you enough for that.
Yeah, thanks for the great questions, everybody. And yeah, I mean, I'm happy to learn as much as I can, and I'm open to discussion because, yeah, I want to be the best representation that I can be for this work, you know? So
Well, it
open to
really-
dialogues, and, you know, that's important. But thank you, Danny. Thank you, Katie, so much for making this connection. You're the best. And yeah, it's been remarkable.
So again, if you would like to continue the conversation in a more direct and kind of informal way, please email me and let me know, and we'll see if we can put that together.
That'd be great. Thank you.
All right, I'm gonna click a button that is gonna end this, and it's been a really extraordinary experience.
Bye, everybody. I love all of you.
Everyone,
Stay
thank
safe.
you, Ali.
Stay
You're about to
healthy.
be back in your apartment there in New
I
York.
know.
You'll get out of there soon.
Yeah.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you
Good
so
night,
much.
everyone. Thank you.